Understanding where your best posture is will help you dictate which position feels the most comfortable for you. It will also help you understand what your best pillow looks and potentially feels like, and also what your best mattress may look and feel like as well. G'day, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to show you how you can find your best sleeping posture and how that relates to lying on your back, lying on your side, maybe sitting up in bed if you're someone who likes to read, or even lying on your belly with your head twisted to one side. Even though it's much demonized, I feel like we're missing some of the bigger perspective that might make that a little bit more comfortable for more people. And I want to roll that into how you can figure out whether your current pillow or mattress is good enough for you based on the postures that you can get into. So the first and most important thing to cover in this video, and we've touched on this previously when we did a video on how to find your perfect sitting posture. And the idea basically is that you've got to understand what a good posture feels like first before you even get to lying down in bed. Like we did in the previous video, the best way to do this is to take a standing position. So what a lot of people don't necessarily pick up on when understanding posture, irrespective of whether you're standing, sitting, or lying down, it's obviously the same body that you use for each of those activities. So if you can understand what a perfect standing posture looks and feels like, then you can automatically take that framework and that set of expectations and feelings into your perfect sitting posture and obviously into your perfect lying positions, whichever one you feel is the best one for you at the moment. Now, the best way to understand this is, if you can obviously stand up, but I'll kneel here so that I'm in the frame of the camera, is that you want to make sure that you're up nice and tall with your shoulders comfortably back. Now, the common misconception surrounding shoulder posture is that your best shoulder posture is unlikely to be back and down. The reason for that is when we tend to slouch and lose good shoulder positions through gravity, we tend to drop our shoulders and roll them forwards. So if we're counteracting that by ideally doing the opposite, then we're obviously pulling our shoulders back and then lifting them up slightly. Now, we don't want you to raise your shoulders. What I like to say to my patients is that just make sure that you feel like you're accepting the weight of your arms and shoulders and not feeling like you're resting on those shoulders. Now, this is a really important position to understand because this is an ideal standing shape. If you were to sit down, nothing should change. And ideally, when you're trying to get down onto the bed, you need to make sure that you're respecting the same anatomical positions as you are when you are standing or sitting. Obviously, once you've found your good position, we want to make sure that we're keeping this same shape when we're lying down on our side. Essentially, your head, shoulders, and trunk, essentially the spinal line that goes down through your body, should essentially feel the same. If you look at yourself from the side and you feel like your mattress is soft enough that your hips drop down, or that your shoulders are broad enough, or the mattress is soft enough where you feel like you're sinking in or you're getting pushed out to one side, you need to take that into account to make sure that your body stays aligned and in a good position going forwards. Now, when you're lying on your side, a lot of people tend to find that they tend to lift their knees up into more of a fetal position. So what I would recommend to you is try every now and again to make sure that you stretch yourself out as far as you feel comfortable, because then we can see that those hips go into some relative extension. It can stop those hips from being tight at the front of the hip, which is obviously a potential issue if you've got some knee pain or hip pain or even low back pain. Now, the other thing that's important to note here is that for me, it feels like my neck is bent up a little bit. I don't necessarily feel like I'm really straight through here. So essentially, when we're looking to try and find the ideal pillow for you in this position, your pillow should be the thing that fills the gap between the tip of your shoulder and your head, taking into account how thick or how dense or how soft your mattress might be. Now, in terms of lying on your back, the really interesting thing about lying on your back is we're taking the same approach of being in a really nice posture. In theory, when we're in the same position, when you lie down, nothing should really change from that. So actually, in a perfect world, the majority of us should be in a position where our head is flat on the ground. And when we add a pillow into the mix, what that automatically does is that automatically puts my neck into more flexion. So again, if you're someone who is sitting up all day reading, or whether you're on a computer or laptop, and you find that you're consistently in a neck flexed position, or ideally, we'd love for you to be up a little bit taller, and in a perfect world, supporting that good posture by being in sort of the Dracula vampire position, where you're essentially dead straight. Now, obviously that's not necessarily ideal for a lot of people. So what we'd recommend then, if you do prefer lying on your back, obviously try and get a thinner pillow or as thin a pillow as possible so that when you are in this position, you're not being forced into too much neck flexion because it may overload a neck that's consistently overloaded throughout the day while you're doing the things that you need to do. So a really interesting thing about sleeping positions and how you feel the next day, it may not necessarily be a consequence of the shapes and positions that you're in at night, even though that's the topic of this video. It may actually be a bigger consequence of what you've done during the day. There might be a common theme of subpar positions and postures that you're getting into that are setting you up for failure when you go to sleep and then when you wake up in the morning. So if you've used up all of your musculoskeletal buffer or all of your tissue tolerance during the day, then when you put yourself into a position that may be less than ideal posturally and positionally, your body's already close to the threshold of being uncomfortable and dysfunctional, and you're less likely to tolerate a subpar position in bed than if you had made better decisions or better positions during that day. So what I want to promote with that particular piece of information is that if you're waking up stiff and sore in the morning, yes, you want to double check that everything's good for you posturally in bed, but there's every chance that the twice amount of time that you're spending upright during the day might hold the keys as to why you're waking up stiff and sore in the first place. Now, if you're someone who likes to sit up and read in bed, you need to make desperately sure that you're not sacrificing a good spinal position and not sacrificing a good neck position for that period of time. These two positions and shapes can be quite detrimental to you. But if I was to keep this same shape and then stand up, hopefully you'll be able to see this, but all of a sudden I'm in a much more terrible position posturally. So even though I want to be in this position, I'm sacrificing that shape just so that I can be in a somewhat comfortable position in the short term while I'm doing something. And for me, this position is a position that I try and advise everyone to stay out of as much as possible. It's really toxic for your spinal health. But of course, we still need to respect the fact that you may want to read a book or use your phone or laptop or iPad or whatever it might be before you fall asleep, even though that's not necessarily ideal sleep hygiene. So instead of being in this position, what I advise most people to do is to take that same good posture and take it onto your side. So you can have your book, your iPad, whatever it might be in this position and still maintain a really nice neck, shoulder and back shape, not having to sacrifice a good position to get down there. And ultimately this will allow you to do what you want to do more often and for longer without necessarily accruing the same dysfunction that you may have otherwise. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about here is we need to have a conversation surrounding mattresses. So we've covered pillows a little bit in terms of how a good posture when you're lying on your back or lying on your side really dictates how thick that pillow needs to be. But it's the same concept with a good mattress. Now, the thing that we need to understand here is it's very, very hard to get a sense of whether a mattress is good enough for you without a phone or a second set of eyes to see how you lie on that mattress. Obviously, when you're lying on your back, it's a little bit easier to tell whether you're sinking into a bad position or not, because if you're lying down on your back, if you're keeping a straight back, and then you feel like you then sink into the bed, your trunk drops below your hips, or your shoulders tend to round, and you don't feel like you can be in this really good posture, it tends to be a dead giveaway. But when you're lying on your side, as I said, if it's too soft and you feel like your hips dig into the bed a little bit more and you end up sort of in this position without realizing it, it's not necessarily going to support optimal spinal function in the long term. And again, the consequences of your day-to-day postural habits will be exposed a little bit more so on a mattress that doesn't fit your ideal postures and positions. We need to discuss the idea of sleeping on your stomach and whether that's good or bad for you. Now, I've done a video previously on this topic, but in summary, essentially what we're talking about here is we're demonizing a position for the wrong reasons, potentially. The main reason why so many people say that lying on your belly with your head turned off to the side is bad for you is because it often leads to neck pain and soreness or shoulder pain and soreness or a dead arm or something like that. But I would argue that it's not the position that's necessarily at fault, because after all, lying and sleeping on your stomach, again, which is worse on a pillow that's quite thick, But if you're someone who likes to lie on your stomach with your head turned to the side, this is essentially an expression of normal neck range of motion. So we know as therapists and in the industry that everyone should have the capacity to, at the very least, rotate your neck to 90 degrees either side. And my neck feels a little bit stiff at the moment, but if you're not getting to 90 degrees, then you could argue that you're missing some normal neck range of motion and that the joints in your neck are probably a little bit stiffer, some of the musculature over the top's potentially a little bit tighter. And then when you put yourself in this position, you're not even necessarily getting to the full 90 degrees. So for me to get into that full 90 degrees, I need to be flat on my stomach and then cranking my neck to the side. And again, I don't even feel like I'm at 90 degrees here. But the point being is that if I'm already missing some neck range of motion, then this will expose that lack of range. But what I find with my patients is that as soon as we start to reduce some of the joint stiffness, the muscular tightness, any of the restrictions in this area, then this position starts to become a little bit more comfortable again. So the important thing about this is, again, that sleeping position on its own is an amazing way to expose your daytime postural habits, the dysfunction you accrue day to day, take into bed, put into that position. And again, it exposes some of that underlying hidden dysfunction that you may not have realized that you had before you went to bed. So ultimately, what I want to promote here is that whether you like to sleep on your side, whether you like to sleep on your back, whether you like to sneak into that position every now and again, maybe not fully flat on your stomach, but in that 3/4 or that half side, half lung in your belly position, you should have the capacity to do that if that's what makes you feel comfortable and that's what your body can tolerate and gives you the best sleep. Now, obviously, these ideas change a little bit if you're already in pain, whether you have back pain or neck pain or shoulder pain or hip pain, whatever it might be. But the theme and the underlying principles are exactly the same. So you can understand how to stand in a good posture, then ideally you're striving to support those same positions irrespective of what angle your body's in. So it's a really important conversation. It's a very simple conversation at the end of the day. We're just trying to build things around a really nice posture, just like we are if you're lifting heavy weights or sitting at a computer or playing a sport. Optimal mechanics and optimal function is the same because it's the same body irrespective of what you're doing. So I hope that was genuinely helpful. Let me know if it was, but we'll see you in the next one. Bye.